The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, as Namdi, a young boy of 20 years, walked back from the village stream. He balanced a large earthen pot of water on his head, his bare feet crunching against the dry earth. The air was thick with the scent of burning wood and the distant hum of village life. But something felt wrong. The birds had stopped singing, and the usual chatter of children playing had faded into an eerie silence. Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the bushes. Namdi froze, his heart pounding. Before he could react, soldiers in tattered uniforms burst out, their faces hard and their eyes cold. They shouted at him to stop, but Namdi dropped the pot and ran. The water spilled everywhere, soaking the ground as he sprinted toward the village. The soldiers were faster. They caught him, their rough hands grabbing his arms and dragging him to the ground. Namdi kicked and screamed, but there were too many of them. One soldier struck him with the butt of a rifle, and the world went black. An hour later, a young girl from the village, who had been hiding in the bushes, ran to Namdi's home. Her voice trembled as she told his mother, Nkiru, what she had seen. They took him, Mom. Nkiru. They took Namdi. Nkiru's heart shattered. She fell to her knees, her hands clutching the earth as if it could bring her son back. Her wails echoed through the village, a sound so raw and painful that even the trees seemed to weep with her. Nkiru's cries brought the villagers running. They found her on the ground, her face streaked with tears, her body shaking with sobs. Her husband, Okeke, had died years ago, and Namdi was her only child, her only hope. Now he was gone, taken by the soldiers who had been raiding villages for weeks. The women of the village gathered around Nkiru, trying to comfort her. They brought her water, but she refused to drink. They offered her food, but she pushed it away. Her grief was too deep, too heavy. She rocked back and forth, clutching Namdi's shirt to her chest. It still smelled like him, like the herbs he used to gather in the forest. Why? She cried out to the sky. Why take my son? What did he do to deserve this? The men of the village stood nearby, their faces grim. They had seen this before. The soldiers came without warning, taking young men to fight in a war they didn't understand. But this time it was Namdi. This time it was personal. As night fell, the villagers lit a fire and sat with Nkiru. They sang songs of comfort, but their voices were heavy with sorrow. Nkiru stared into the flames, her tears drying on her cheeks. She felt empty, as if a part of her had been ripped away. I will get him back, she whispered, though no one heard her. I will find my son. But deep down she knew the truth. The soldiers were ruthless, and the war was cruel. Namdi might never return. The next morning the village was in chaos. More soldiers had come in the night, taking 3 more young men. Families wept in the streets, their cries mingling with the sounds of chickens clucking and goats bleating. The once peaceful village was now a place of fear and despair. Nkiru sat outside her hut, her eyes red and swollen. She watched as the village elders gathered in the square, their voices low and serious. The village elders spoke of the war, of the soldiers who came like shadows in the night, stealing their sons and brothers. We must do something, one elder said, his voice trembling with anger. We cannot let them take our children anymore. But what could they do? The soldiers had guns, and the villagers had only sticks and machetes. They were farmers, not fighters. The elders argued late into the night, but no solution came. Nkiru listened, her heart heavy. She thought of Namdi, of his bright smile and his love for storytelling. He had always dreamed of becoming a great warrior, but not like this. Not taken by force to fight in a war that wasn't his. As the moon rose high in the sky, Nkiru made a decision. She would not sit and wait for news of her son. She would fight in her own way to keep his memory alive. But how? The answer came to her in a dream that night. She saw Namdi standing tall and proud, surrounded by children who looked just like him. Our family will not end, he said. Our legacy will live on. When Nkiru woke, she knew what she had to do. The soldiers returned a week later, their boots pounding against the dry earth. This time they came in broad daylight, their guns gleaming in the sun. The villagers tried to hide, but the soldiers were relentless. They kicked down doors, dragged young men from their homes, and tied their hands with rough rope. Nkiru watched from her hut, her heart breaking as she saw the fear in the boys' eyes. They were just children, barely old enough to hold a hoe, let alone a gun. But the soldiers didn't care. They needed fighters, and they would take them by force. When the soldiers left, the village was silent. The mothers wept, the fathers cursed, and the children clung to each other in fear. The elders called another meeting, but this time, their voices were filled with desperation. "We must fight back," one man said, his fists clenched. "We cannot let them destroy our village." But others shook their heads. "We are not soldiers. We cannot win against guns." Nkiru stood at the edge of the crowd, her eyes blazing with determination. She stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. "We may not have guns," she said, "but we have something stronger. We have our traditions, our families, our love for each other. We will find a way to survive. We must." The villagers stared at her, their eyes wide with surprise. Nkiru had spoken with more courage than any of the men. And in that moment, they began to see her not just as a grieving mother, but as a leader. The elders met again, this time with Nkiru by their side. They spoke late into the night, their voices low and urgent. The soldiers would keep coming, they knew that. But they couldn't let them take everyone. "We must hide our young men," one elder said. "Send them to the forest, to the caves. They will be safe there." But Nkiru shook her head. "The soldiers will find them. We need a better plan." She told them of her dream, of Namdi and the children who looked like him. "Our family lines must continue," she said. "Even if our sons are taken, we must find a way to keep our legacies alive." The elders listened, their faces thoughtful. They knew of the old traditions, of women who married other women to bear children in their husbands' names. It was rare, but it had been done before. "It is a bold plan," one elder said. "But these are desperate times." In the end they agreed. The village would protect its young men as best as they could, but they would also prepare for the worst. Nkiru's plan would be their last hope. As the meeting ended, Nkiru looked up at the stars. She thought of Namdi, of his laughter and his dreams. She would make sure his legacy lived on no matter what. But first, she had to face her own grief. Days turned into weeks, and the village slowly adjusted to its new reality. The young men remained hidden during the day, but worked in the farms only under the cover of darkness. The women took on more responsibilities, tending to the crops, fetching water, and protecting their families. Nkiru, though still grieving, became a pillar of strength for the village. She woke up each morning before the sun rose, and keep her hands busy with chores to keep her mind from wandering to Namdi. She would clean her hut, grind cassava, and weave baskets to sell at the market. But no matter how hard she tried, the pain of losing her only child never left her. One evening, as she sat by the fire, an old woman from the village approached her. Her name was Neka, and she was known for her wisdom and knowledge of the old ways. "Nkiru," Neka said softly, "you carry a heavy burden, but you must not let it crush you. Your son's spirit is still with you. He would not want you to live in sorrow." Nkiru looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "How can I not grieve, Neka? He was my only child, my only hope." Neka sat beside her and took her hand. "There are other ways to keep hope alive. The traditions of our ancestors are strong. They can guide you if you let them." Nkiru nodded, though she wasn't sure what Neka meant. But deep down, she felt a spark of something, a determination to honor Namdi's memory in a way that would last forever. One afternoon, a traveler arrived in the village. He was thin and weary, his clothes torn and his feet covered in dust. The villagers gathered around him, eager for news from the outside world. "The war is worse than ever," the traveler said, his voice hoarse. "Many have died, and the soldiers are desperate. They are taking boys as young as 12 to fight. Nkiru's heart sank. She pushed through the crowd and grabbed the traveler's arm. Have you heard of a boy named Namdi? He was taken months ago. The traveler hesitated. His eyes filled with pity. I am sorry, he said quietly. I heard of a boy with that name. He did not survive. The world seemed to spin around Nkiru. She stumbled back, her legs giving way as she fell to the ground. The villagers rushed to her side, but she barely heard their voices. All she could think of was Namdi, her brave and kind son, gone forever. That night, Nkiru sat alone in her hut, clutching Namdi's shirt. She cried until she had no tears left, her body shaking with grief. But as the hours passed, a strange calm came over her. She knew what she had to do. Nkiru's husband, Okeke, had been the last of his line. His brothers had died young, and he had no cousins to carry on the family name. When he passed away, Namdi had been their only hope. Now, with the sad news of Namdi's demise, the family lineage was in danger of ending. Nkiru knew the importance of lineage in Igbo culture. It was more than just a name, it was a connection to the ancestors, a way of preserving history and identity. Without a child to carry on Okeke's name, their family would be forgotten. She thought of the old traditions the elders and Nneka had mentioned. In times of crisis, women had been known to take on the role of a female husband, marrying another woman to bear children in their late husband's name. It was a rare and controversial practice, but Nkiru saw no other option. The next morning, she went to see the village elders. She explained her plan, despite the fear in her heart. She spoke with a shaky voice. I will marry a woman who will bear children in Okeke's name, she said. Our family line will not end. The elders became silent for some time, but one of them finally spoke. This is a heavy burden, Nkiru. Are you sure you can bear it? Nkiru nodded. I have lost my son, but I will not lose my family's legacy. This is the only way. The elders agreed to support Nkiru's plan, but warned her that not everyone in the village would understand the old tradition. They also told her that she would face resistance, and even ridicule from so many people. But Nkiru was determined. She went to her husband's kinsmen, who lived in a nearby village. They were skeptical at first, but Nkiru spoke with such passion and conviction that they could not refuse her. Okeke was a good man, one of the kinsmen said. He would not want his name to die with him. If this is the only way, then we will support you. With their approval, Nkiru began the search for a suitable woman. Nkiru traveled to neighboring villages, seeking a woman who would agree to her unusual proposal. Many turned her away, afraid of the stigma that came with such an arrangement. But Nkiru did not give up. Finally, she met a young woman named Chioma. Chioma was kind and hardworking, with a quiet strength that reminded Nkiru of herself. She had lost her own family in the war and was looking for a place to belong. Nkiru explained her plan, and Chioma listened carefully. When Nkiru finished, Chioma nodded in acceptance. I will do it, she said. I will bear children in your husband's name, and together, we will keep your family's legacy alive. Nkiru felt a surge of hope for the first time in months. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but with Chioma by her side, she felt ready to face whatever challenges that came their way. Chioma moved into Nkiru's hut, and the two women began to prepare for the wedding. It was not a traditional ceremony, but they followed as many customs as they could. The villagers whispered and stared, but Nkiru held her head high. On the day of the wedding, Nkiru and Chioma stood before the elders and the kinsmen. Nkiru paid the bride price, a symbol of her commitment to the union. The elders blessed the marriage, and the villagers, though still unsure, began to accept the arrangement. As the sun set, Nkiru and Chioma sat together by the fire. They spoke of their hopes for the future, of the children they would raise and the legacy they would build. For the first time in a long time, Nkiru felt a sense of peace. She knew Namdi would be proud. The morning of the wedding was bright and clear, but the air in the village was heavy with tension. Nkiru and Chioma's union was unlike anything the villagers had seen before. Though the elders had given their blessing, many still whispered in doubts and cast uneasy glances. But Nkiru stood firm, her resolve unshaken. She had chosen this path, and she would walk it with pride. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. Nkiru wore a wrapper of deep indigo, the color of strength and resilience, while Chioma wore a bright yellow fabric, symbolizing hope and new beginnings. The villagers gathered in the square, their faces a mix of curiosity and skepticism. The elders presided over the ceremony, offering prayers to the ancestors and asking for their guidance. Nkiru, the eldest of the village leaders, began, his voice carrying the weight of tradition. "You have chosen a path that is not often walked. But in these times of war and loss, we must find new ways to survive. May the ancestors bless this union and grant you strength." Nkiru and Chioma exchanged gifts, a bundle of kola nuts from Nkiru and a hand-woven basket from Chioma. The kola nuts were shared among the elders, a symbol of unity and respect. As the ceremony concluded, the villagers reluctantly joined in the celebration, drumming and dancing to honor the new family. But beneath the surface, Nkiru could feel the unease. She knew this was only the beginning. The real challenges are still ahead. Life in Nkiru's hut changed after the wedding. Chioma settled into her new role with grace, helping Nkiru with the chores and tending to the small farm behind their home. The two women grew closer, their bond strengthening as they worked side by side. Nkiru taught Chioma about Okeke's family, their history, their traditions, and their values. She spoke of Nnamdi often, her voice trembling with emotion as she shared stories of his laughter, his kindness, and his dreams. Chioma listened intently. Her heart ached for Nkiru's loss but also filled with admiration for her strength. "We will honor his memory," Chioma promised one evening as they sat by the fire. "Our children will know his name and his spirit. They will carry his legacy forward." Nkiru smiled, a rare but genuine expression of hope. For the first time since Nnamdi's capture, she felt a flicker of joy. Months after, and Chioma's belly began to swell with new life. The villagers watched with a mix of curiosity and skepticism, but Nkiru didn't mind. She focused on caring for Chioma, ensuring she had everything she had needed for a healthy pregnancy. When the time came, Chioma gave birth to a strong, healthy boy. Nkiru held the baby in her arms, tears streaming down her face as she said, "Welcome, little one. You are the hope of our family." They named the child Okeke, after Nkiru's late husband. The villagers gathered to celebrate the birth, their earlier doubts softened by the sight of the tiny, perfect child. Nkiru's heart swelled with pride as she introduced her son to the community. "This is Okeke," she declared, her voice steady and strong. "He will carry on our family's name and honor the memory of his brother, Nnamdi." With the arrival of little Okeke, Nkiru and Chioma's family began to thrive. Chioma proved to be a devoted mother. Her love for the child was evident in every smile and gentle touch. Nkiru, too, found new purpose in her role as a mother and mentor. The villagers, once skeptical, began to see the strength and resilience of the new family. They admired Nkiru's determination and Chioma's kindness, and slowly, the whispers of doubt faded away. But Nkiru knew their journey was far from over. The war still raged, and the soldiers continued to raid nearby villages. She worried for the future, but she also felt a renewed sense of hope. With Chioma and little Okeke by her side, she believed they could face whatever challenges that lied ahead. As little Okeke grew, Nkiru made sure he understood the importance of their family's traditions. She taught him about the ancestors, the values of hard work and respect, and the significance of their lineage. "Our family is more than just a name," she told him one evening as they sat by the fire. "It is a connection to the past and a promise for the future. You must carry it with pride." Chioma, too, played a vital role in shaping Okeke's understanding of their culture. She sang him traditional lullabies and told him stories of bravery and wisdom. Together, Nkiru and Chioma created a home filled with love, respect, and tradition. Years passed, and Kiru's family continued to grow. Chioma gave birth to a daughter, whom they named Neoma, meaning good mother. The children brought joy and laughter to the hut, their presence a constant reminder of the family's resilience. Nkiru's farm flourished, and she became a respected figure in the village. Her courage and determination inspired others, and her family became a symbol of hope in a time of darkness. But even as they prospered, Nkiru never forgot the pain of losing Namdi. She often visited the stream where he had been taken, whispering prayers to the ancestors and asking for their guidance. Despite their success, Nkiru and Chioma faced challenges. Some villagers still struggled to accept their unconventional family, and there were times when the children faced teasing or exclusion. But Nkiru taught her children to hold their heads high. "We are strong," she told them. "We are proud. And we will not let anyone make us feel ashamed of who we are." Chioma too stood firm. She became a voice of reason and compassion in the village, helping to bridge the gap between tradition and change. When Neoma was born, the family's bond grew even stronger. Nkiru marveled at the way Chioma loved and cared for both children, her heart overflowing with gratitude. "You have given me more than I ever dreamed," Nkiru told Chioma one night as they sat together under the stars. "You have given me a family." Chioma smiled, her eyes shining with tears. "And you have given me a home. We are stronger together." As the children grew, they began to take on responsibilities in the village. Okeke helped with the farm, while Neoma learned to weave and cook. Both children were kind and respectful, earning the admiration of the villagers. Nkiru watched them with pride, knowing that her family's legacy was in good hands. She had faced unimaginable loss, but through courage and determination, she had built a new future. And as she looked at her children, she knew that Namdi's spirit lived on in them. The war continued to rage, and its effects were felt deeply in the village. Families were torn apart, and the once thriving community struggled to hold itself together. Nkiru, now a respected elder, saw the pain and division around her and knew something had to be done. One evening, she called a meeting in the village square. The villagers gathered, their faces weary but hopeful as they looked to Nkiru for guidance. "We have lost much," she began, her voice steady and strong. "Our sons, our brothers, our fathers, they have been taken from us. But we cannot let this war destroy us. We must come together as one family and support each other." She spoke of her own journey, of the loss of Namdi and the strength she had found in building a new family with Chioma. Her words resonated with the villagers, many of whom had faced similar struggles. "We are stronger together," Kiru declared. "Let us honor our traditions, but also find new ways to survive and thrive. Let us unite, not just as a village, but as a family." Her speech inspired the villagers, and they began to work together in ways they hadn't before. They shared resources, protected each other's children, and offered comfort to those who had lost loved ones. Nkiru's call for unity became a beacon of hope in a time of darkness. The war had left deep scars on the village. Fields lay fallow, homes were abandoned, and the once bustling market was now a shadow of its former self. The villagers lived in constant fear of the soldiers, who continued to raid nearby communities. Nkiru often thought of Namdi, wondering if he had suffered in the war. She visited the stream where he had been taken, leaving small offerings of coconuts and palm wine for the ancestors. She prayed for his spirit to find peace and for the war to end. One day, as she stood by the stream, she noticed a group of children playing nearby. They laughed and chased each other, their joy a stark contrast to the grim reality of the war. Nkiru smiled, realizing that despite the pain, life went on. The children were the future, and it was up to her generation to protect and guide them. Nkiru's leadership had a profound impact on the village, especially for the women. They saw how she had taken control of her destiny, defying tradition to build a new family and preserve her lineage. Inspired by her example, many women began to take on more active roles in the community. They formed a women's council, led by Nkiru and Chioma, to address the challenges facing the village. They organized food distributions, cared for orphan children, and even negotiated with neighboring villages for protection. The men, initially skeptical, soon realized the value of the women's efforts. They began to work alongside them, recognizing that unity and cooperation were essential for survival. Nkiru felt a deep sense of pride as she watched the women of the village rise to the occasion. "We are not just mothers and wives," she told them. "We are leaders, protectors, and builders of the future." As the years passed, Nkiru and Chioma's family faced new challenges. Okeke and Neoma, now teenagers, began to ask questions about their family's unusual arrangement. "Why do we have two mothers?" Okeke asked one evening as they sat by the fire. "Why is our family different from others?" Nkiru and Chioma exchanged a glance before Nkiru began to explain. She told them about Namdi, about the war, and about the difficult choices she had made to preserve their family's legacy. "Our family is built on love and strength," she said. "We may be different, but that is what makes us special. We honor the past while building a new future." Okeke and Neoma listened intently, their young minds grappling with the complexities of their family's history. Over time, they came to understand and appreciate the sacrifices that had been made for them. The villagers, inspired by Nkiru's leadership, rallied around her family. They helped with the farm, shared their resources, and included Okeke and Neoma in community activities. Nkiru was deeply touched by their support. "We are not alone," she told Chioma. "Our family is part of something bigger, a community that cares for one another." This sense of unity gave Nkiru hope for the future. She knew that as long as they stood together, they could overcome any challenge. As Okeke and Neoma grew older, they began to take on leadership roles in the village. Okeke, strong and determined, helped organize the young men to protect the village from raids. Neoma, kind and wise, worked with the Women's Council to care for the vulnerable. Nkiru watched with pride as her children embraced their responsibilities. "They are the future," she told Chioma. "They will carry on our legacy and lead the village to a brighter tomorrow." Through hard work and unity, the village began to prosper once more. The fields were replanted, the market reopened, and the villagers rebuilt their homes. Nkiru's family, now one of the most respected in the community, played a key role in this revival. Their farm became a model of success, and they used their wealth to help others. They donated food to the needy, funded the construction of a new school, and even helped young couples start their own families. Nkiru's heart swelled with pride as she saw the impact of their efforts. "This is what it means to be a family," she told Chioma. "To lift each other up and build a better future for all." As Nkiru grew older, she became a source of wisdom and guidance for the village. People came to her for advice, and she always listened with patience and compassion. She often spoke of the importance of tradition, but also of the need to adapt and grow. "Our ancestors gave us a strong foundation," she said. "But it is up to us to build upon it and create a future that honors their legacy." Her words resonated with the villagers, who saw her as a living example of resilience and strength. Just as the village began to thrive, a new challenge arose. A group of outsiders fleeing the war arrived seeking refuge. They were tired, hungry, and desperate, and the villagers were unsure how to respond. Nkiru, now a respected elder, called a meeting to discuss the situation. "We cannot turn them away," she said. "We were once in their position, and it was the kindness of others that helped us survive." Her words inspired the villagers, and they welcomed the newcomers with open arms. Together, they worked to rebuild the village and create a new community built on unity and compassion. The arrival of the newcomers brought new challenges, but also new opportunities. The women of the village, led by Nkiru and Chioma, played a key role in integrating the newcomers and ensuring their needs were met. They organized food distributions, provided shelter, and even helped the newcomers start their own farms. Their efforts strengthened the bonds between the two groups, creating a sense of unity and shared purpose. Nkiru felt a deep sense of pride as she watched the women of the village rise to the occasion. "We are the backbone of this community," she told them. And together we can overcome anything. As the village continued to grow, the bonds between Nkiru's family and the newcomers deepened. Okeke and Neoma, now young adults, formed friendships with the children of the newcomers, their shared experiences creating a sense of camaraderie. One evening, as the families gathered around a large fire to share a meal, Nkiru stood to address the group. "We are no longer separate," she said, her voice carrying the weight of her years. "We are one family, united by our struggles and our hopes. Let us honor the past, but also look to the future with courage and unity." The villagers cheered, their voices rising into the night sky. Nkiru's words had struck a chord, reminding them of the strength they had found in coming together. The peace of the village was shattered one fateful morning when soldiers arrived at its borders. Unlike the raiding parties of the past, this group was larger and more organized. They demanded food, supplies, and young men to join their ranks. The villagers, led by Nkiru and her family, stood firm. "We will not give in to fear," Nkiru declared. "We have worked too hard to rebuild our lives. We will protect our home." The men and women of the village, armed with machetes, sticks, and whatever tools they could find, formed a defensive line. Okeke, now a strong and capable young man, stood at the front, his eyes filled with determination. The soldiers, surprised by the villagers' resistance, hesitated. Nkiru stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. "Leave this place," she said. "We are not your enemies, but we will defend our home with everything we have." The soldiers, perhaps moved by her courage or unwilling to risk a fight, eventually retreated. The villagers cheered, their voices filled with relief and pride. Nkiru turned to her family, her eyes shining with tears. "We did it," she said. "Together we protected our home." The victory over the soldiers marked a turning point for the village. The newcomers, inspired by the villagers' bravery, fully integrated into the community. Together, they worked to strengthen their defenses and ensure that no one would threaten their home again. Nkiru's family, now seen as the heart of the village, continued to lead by example. Okeke and Neoma married and started families of their own, their children a testament to the resilience and strength of their lineage. Nkiru often sat with her grandchildren, telling them stories of Namdi and the struggles they had overcome. "Remember," she would say, "our family is built on love, courage, and unity. Never forget where you come from, and always honor the legacy of those who came before you." As the war finally came to an end, the village entered a new era of peace and prosperity. The fields flourished, the market buzzed with activity, and the children laughed and played without fear. Nkiru, now an elderly woman, watched with pride as her family and community thrived. She often visited Namdi's stream, leaving offerings and whispering prayers of gratitude. "We have come so far," she said to Chioma one evening as they sat together under the stars. "Our family, our village. We have survived and grown stronger. I am so proud of what we have built." Chioma smiled, her hand resting on Nkiru's. "And it all started with you," she said. "Your courage, your love, your determination. You are the heart of this family, Nkiru. Always." Nkiru's story became a legend in the village, a tale of resilience and leadership that inspired generations. The women of the village, in particular, saw her as a symbol of strength and hope. They formed a council to ensure that women's voices were heard in all matters of the community. Nkiru, though no longer able to lead, offered guidance and wisdom, her words carrying the weight of her experiences. "Women are the backbone of our society," she told the council. "We are mothers, leaders, and protectors. Let us continue to build a future where our daughters can thrive and lead with pride." As Nkiru's life drew to a close, she gathered her family around her. Okeke, Neoma, and their children listened intently as she shared her final words of wisdom. "Our family's legacy is not just a name," she said. "It is a promise to honor the past, protect the present, and build a better future. Never forget where you come from, and always strive to lift others up." Her family nodded, their eyes filled with tears. They knew that Nkiru's spirit would live on in them, guiding them as they carried her legacy forward. Nkiru passed away peacefully, surrounded by her loved ones. The village mourned her loss, but they also celebrated her life. They told stories of her courage, her kindness, and her unwavering love for her family. Chioma, now the matriarch of the family, ensured that Nkiru's teachings were passed down to the next generation. "She was the heart of our family," she told the children, "and her spirit will always be with us." With Nkiru gone, Okeke and Neoma took on the responsibility of leading the family and the village. They worked together, their bond unbreakable, to ensure that their mother's legacy lived on. They built a school in Nkiru's honor, where children could learn about their history and traditions. They also established a fund to help families in need, ensuring that no one would ever have to face hardship alone. As the years passed, Okeke and Neoma's children grew into strong, capable leaders. They carried on Nkiru's legacy, guiding the village with wisdom and compassion. The village, now a thriving community, became a beacon of hope for others. People came from far and wide to learn from its success, inspired by the story of a mother who had turned loss into strength and despair into hope. The village entered a new era of prosperity, its people united by a shared sense of purpose and pride. Nkiru's family, now one of the most respected in the region, continued to lead by example. They honored the past while embracing the future, their lives a testament to the power of love, courage, and unity. Every year, the villagers gathered to honor Nkiru's memory. They told stories of her life, sang songs of her courage, and left offerings at Namdi's stream place of disappearance. "We remember the past," they said, "not to dwell on it, but to learn from it." Nkiru's story reminds us that even in the darkest times, there is still hope,